Hello and welcome to another episode of the Smash Accept podcast. I'm your host, Michael Royer. You can find me on Twitter at DynastyDad FF. Joined as always by my main man at FFSnoog. And today, what we're going to talk about is we've seen Justin Jefferson. We've seen Ja'Marr Chase this last year. We've seen CeeDee Lamb be the wide receiver one overall. We're going to tell you about 6 guys today who have the upside to be the one overall. Not in Dynasty, but in 2025. And Snoog, when you look at this, I started to take a look at the data over the last couple of years. And in the last 5 years, the wide receiver one overall had these 3 things. They had to have 175 targets. There are very few wide receivers in the NFL that get 175 targets. They averaged 1,717 yards. A 1,700-yard season is nothing to shake a stick at. That is an impressive feature. And then they had 14 touchdowns. So the idea here is you want to take a look at things of when they did it, every single one of these guys, other than Justin Jefferson. You look at when Cooper Kupp did it. You look when CeeDee Lamb did it. You look when Chase did it. The defense was poor as well. So there's got to be a combination of you have to have the quarterback to throw you the ball, right? Burrow did it for Chase. Dak did it for Lamb. Jefferson had it with Kirk Cousins. I think you need a top 12 to 15 quarterback. You need a defense that is somewhere towards the bottom 10 or have an insane amount of targets at 175. I mean, we saw it as high as Cooper Kupp had it up in the 190 range. So, Snoog, when we look at those things, we break down all that data. Who's one guy outside the big 3 that you're like, you know what, Dad? This is someone I'm buying in Dynasty. This is someone that could literally be the wide receiver one overall in 2025.
Nico Collins, the Houston Texans wide receiver, I'm so in on. I think he has the talent, he has the quarterback play, and he has the target volume. And we saw last year he was averaging like 120 yards per game before that injury. Absolute stud. He was on pace to put up like 1,700 yards last year. He actually ended up finishing off the year playing injured and all that good stuff, but with 83.8 yards per game, which is still elite. That's a 1,400-yard pace, 18-plus fantasy points per game. Like, he was a superstar wide receiver, had 1,000 yards in like 11 games while playing injured. Like, a lot of the things that you see in a player that we saw the breakout in his sophomore year with over 1,200 yards, 10-plus touchdowns, alongside Tank Dell also having a great year. The team took a step back last year a little bit. They had offensive line issues, offensive coordinator issues, just things weren't clicking consistently for them. Nico was hurt, then Tank Dell got hurt. Like, they were all hurt, so it was just very weird for that offense. But we're looking for a guy that can hit the targets. He's going to dominate the target share, absolute alpha in this offense. Hit that yardage mark. He's going to go for 1,600 to 1,700 yards if he plays a full 17. And you need to score touchdowns. And Nico Collins is a touchdown machine. He's that red zone guy. Nick Caley coming over from the Rams is going to dial in those good plays and down in the red zone for Nico Collins. He's going to use them in motion, get him used in the slot, use that big athletic size to an advantage for this team downfield. And they're going to push the ball downfield more. So Nico Collins is the guy that fits the mold of all 3. He's a stud talent, and I think that C.J. Stroud and him and that connection can help him get to that level. So that's why I'm all in on Nico Collins.
For me, when I'm looking at wide receivers, the most important thing I look at is yards per route run, 3.07 in 2024. That was 3rd in the NFL. Over that first 5-game stretch, Snoog, this is 30 receptions, 489 yards, 3.16 yards per route run. He was a guy that was first in receptions, first in yards. He was on pace, Snoog. I know you had said 1,700. He was literally on pace for 2,000 yards and to be the wide receiver one overall. And It was going to happen. The issue is he's got to stay healthy. I think the Texans defense is good enough that he's going to have to be a target hog, which he is. I mean, 30 receptions in 5 weeks. I think that's on the low end. He's someone that could get, in order to get up to that many receptions, he's going to have to get 10, 12, 14 targets a game. And I think he could do that with Tank Dell gone, with Stephon Diggs, with a couple of rookie wide receivers there. I think he's really going to get peppered, and he's going to have that spot. My question to you is, what are you paying for Nico Collins, right? Because Nico Collins is in that, we did a Pillars show where he's kind of in that no man's land in Dynasty where it's like, he's not an all-in asset. He's not a rebuilding asset because he's 26 years old. So talk to me about a couple of trades here that you're like, you know what? I would really consider buying Nico Collins for this.
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely want to either tier off a Chase, a Jefferson, a Nabers, and get Nico in a 27 first plus. That's one avenue we could go if we need to tier back and get some more assets. But if I'm just outright buying him, take your 26 first if it's going to be late. If your team's loaded up and you're kind of like one like superstar off from being the top tier contender by far, take your 26 first, take a player worth a first, like a Chris Olave, Addison, of Roma Dunze, and go get Nico Collins. That's one move. And then if you got some extra first on hand, take 226 mid to late first and go get Nico Collins. I'm willing to pay any of those three type of avenues and ways to get him on my roster, because I think he, like, pairing him up with a Jefferson, a Chase, I think looks so juicy, and I think you're going to get league winning type upside. So that's why I'm super bullish on Nico Collins, and especially if you can get that type of cheapness from him and get him for, wide receiver 8 or 9 costs in Dynasty like he is to the consensus.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can buy him. There's going to be some guys we're going to talk about, but I think you can get Nico for A.J. Brown in a second, Jackson Smith and Jigba in a second, Lad McConkey in a second. And I think you're going to get more stable production, a guy that's clearly has that wide receiver 1 overall upside. Nico Collins, if healthy, is a league winner. It's a lock for top 5. The next guy, and my guy that is he's not a dark horse because it could really happen, but he would be the youngest guy to ever be the wide receiver 1 overall. He's my dynasty wide receiver 1 overall. It's Malik Nabers. I mean, Malik Nabers, the skill set, the target volume, now he gets Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart. And oh my gosh, if we could just see Jameis Winston play with him for like 5 weeks, like the numbers would go
2,000 yards,
right? Like, so that would go through the roof. But we already had a record-breaking rookie season. I mean, 170 targets, Snoog. That checks the box. He's already up over that. And he did that in 14 games. Like, the target volume extended out, he would have been at 190 targets as a rookie. And he already set the record for most targets as a rookie. 109 receptions. That's elite, and I think you're only going to see him improve in that area with Russell Wilson getting more catchable passes. 1,204 yards. Can he get up to 1,700? Absolutely. I think this year he's going to do it. Like, if he's healthy, if that toe is not a real issue, I think Malik Nabers is going to post that for sure. 7 touchdowns. That's the low end. That's the one that we got to see move up. And I think the offense was abysmal. The average is 17 over the last 5. It's the guys that win wide receiver 1 overall. So he's got to have at least 14 to sniff that area, right? Because there was some guys that had 21, 22 that really skewed that number a little bit. But he has the volume. He has the talent to be the wide receiver 1 overall in 2025. And I think you're getting him in the late first in your startups for Dynasty. You're getting him in the late first for your redraft leagues. I see him go after guys that just shouldn't be happening. And I think Malik Nabers is the truth. He's going to put up monster numbers. If you can still get Malik plus for Chase or Jefferson, you do it. I think if you can get, you mentioned Nico. I mean, if I can trade Nico in a late first to get the Nabers, I could do it. I think the other way around, if it's a mid first, I would consider it. But I mean, Malik Nabers, Snoog, he's 21. Like, he's barely old enough to drink. He's going to turn 22 this year. Nico's going to turn 27. So I think that's kind of a guy that I'm trying to avoid making trades. But as much as I love Ted Arroyo McMillan, Travis Hunter, guys like even Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jackson Smith and Jigba, Lad McConkey, I'm adding a first to get to him. I'm that bullish on it because we saw guys in the past where wide receivers were close to Justin Jefferson. Wide receivers were close to Jamar Chase. And then what happened? They made a huge gap. They made that difference in there. I think Malik Nabers, I have him as my wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. By the end of the year, everyone is going to have him as their wide receiver 1 in Dynasty. And I think you just got to get ahead of the curve. I think, BTJ in a second, Puka in a second, Amon-Ra in a second, CeeDee Lamb in a second. I'm tearing up right now because this is your last opportunity. Snoog, if we had hindsight and you could buy Jamar Chase when he was 21, right after his rookie year, you'd go back and you'd get in that time machine. You'd go back and you'd get that sports book from Biff, You go back to the future, you go buy all the Jamar Chase, you buy all the Justin Jefferson. Now I'm buying all the Malik Nabers before it's too late.
Yeah, I love that. I think he's an absolute superstar. We are so in on him as a prospect, so in on him throughout his entire years at LSU. So I'm excited to see him put it all together. Again, if Jameis Winston's throwing him the football, he's putting up 3,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. So we don't even have to worry about him hitting that 17 touchdown mark. Even if it's Dart, he's hitting 1,800 yards and probably 15 touchdowns because he's probably just going to gunsling and force feed him the ball.
Let me throw you some stats here because Malik Nabers is wild. And my guy, Sean T. Owens, I know I called him Seth, but now he's helping us out with the research, a little R&D over at Smash Accept. Some of the stuff that he pulled for me, I mean, 30% targets per route run, second only to Puka Nacua. Snoog, 30% targets per route run. That's insane. 46% air yards. No one's even close. I mean, think about that. 46% of the balls that are thrown, that's insane. 30% on third and fourth down targets, that tied for third. We know that when it comes to a wide receiver's bread and butter, they're targeting that number one on third and fourth downs. They're trying to get up ahead. 33% target share, tied for the highest in the entire league. That's insane. This is someone that you're going to see a monster year with Russell Wilson. If we see Jameis or Jackson Dart, he could blow the roof off this place. Like, Russ isn't going to keep him honest. It'll be fair. It's going to be an upgrade. But you get those two guys gunslinging the ball to Malik Nabers. I'm here for it. I can't wait.
Yeah, my next guy here is kind of on that same type of mold and trajectory as a Nico Collins. If he stays healthy, there's going to be good things that happen. If he doesn't, we're going to get teased again with another elite yards per outrun season, a ton of flashes, an elite points per game season, but a wide receiver 10 to 15 finish because he only plays 12 games. Puka Nacua, this guy did ridiculous things last year, and I think it's time we finally give him his credit and his flowers where it's due. 3 things. You want that elite quarterback. You want that target volume. You want that offensive coaching staff and that offensive success. Sean McVay, Matt Stafford, and he literally dominated the league last year with third best target share percentage on the team, even with Cooper Kupp there. I think him and Davante Adams are both going to eat. I love Adams, one of the best wide receivers to play during my time, the past 5 to 10 years. But Puka Nacua is younger, fresher. They're going to both feast in this offense, but I think Puka's still going to be that, slot menace that just dominates out of the slot. 3.7 yards per route run last year for Puka Nacua. There's been 2 wide receivers since 2008 to do better. Tyreek Hill and Steve Smith. That's it. The only 2 wide receivers that do better since 2007 is those 2 wide receivers. So that's all you need to know about Puka Nacua. The target share, he was top 3 in target share, top 3 in yards per game, hit 18.8 points per game as well. He hit all the metrics that you're looking for, chasing that, wide receiver 1 overall, next elite breakout wide receiver, like we saw with Amon-Ra, like we saw with CeeDee Lamb, like we saw with all these guys kind of following that trajectory and that curve. Puka Nacua fits that. And I think Matt Stafford is the perfect quarterback to help get you to that next level. So Puka, Nico, I view them pretty similarly. I think Nico's a better talent, but I think Puka is probably in a better situation with a veteran and with a better offensive-minded coach and in a system where he's the clear slot for fantasy. So I do think that they both have a clear path to being the wide receiver 1 overall and the talent, but I do think that they're both in that range. So definitely treat those guys as, top 5 to 6 redraft players going into this year at the wide receiver position.
I think Puka is still a guy that you can get a mid-27 first on top of Jefferson. And we need to stop pretending that his draft capital matters. It's like Brock Purdy. The draft capital no longer matters, right? 2 years into the NFL, it no longer matters. And I think people were behind on him saying, it was just an anomaly in 1 year. He got better in 2024. Every single metric, yards per route run, efficiency, everything improved from 2023. That's wild to me. Now, Snoog, my next guy, and I want to go a little bit lower here, is my next guy. You look at 2020, and I talked about the defenses, and we talked about you got to have 170 targets. You got to have this. You got to have that. 2020, Davante Adams, wide receiver 1, Packers defense, 27th against the pass, or overall team defense. Cooper Kupp, he was the anomaly. Rams were 9th, but Cooper Kupp had 190 targets. 2022, Justin Jefferson, the Vikings, 22nd in overall defense. 2023, CeeDee Lamb, the defense was 21st. Bengals, Jamar Chase, defense was 25th. The Atlanta Falcons right now are projected as the 29th best defense.
Worst division in football, too.
They 29th. So there's only 3 teams that are projected to have a worse defense than the Atlanta Falcons. The next part we talked about is we need the target volume. Drake London last year in the 3 games with Michael Penix Jr. had 13 targets per game. I know it's a small sample size, right? But hear me out. That is on pace to go well over 190 targets. He is the only wide receiver in town. Darnell Mooney's there to stretch the field. Kyle Pitts is just not him. 23.1 fantasy points per game over the 3 games with Michael Penix. That's wide receiver 2. 7 receptions, 117 yards. He's got the Michael Penix at quarterback. He's got the target volume. He's got the bottom 5 defense. He is in line to be the wide receiver 1 overall. He is the dark horse guy. And in Dynasty, you and I said this in February. Who was our number 1 buy at the wide receiver position? It was Drake London. We did an entire show on buying Drake London. And what has his stock done the entire time? It's just steadily moved up. And now you can't buy Drake London. And if you still can, go ahead and do it. Go ahead and, like Snoog and I were saying with Nico, and these other guys, give up Flowers, Addison, Moore, Worthy, Olave, Smith, Odunze. I'm adding a first to any of those guys. I might add, an early second to Rashee Rice or T. Higgins or A.J. Brown. I mean, I'm doing whatever I can to get to Drake London. He's currently my Dynasty wide receiver 9, 1 spot behind Nico. If I'm doing a startup, I'm taking him over Nico. I don't think we get to that spot, but I think Drake London's value, I still think, I did it the other day in the Discord. I talked to a guy, trade CeeDee Lamb for, Drake London in a mid-27 first. And I think you can still make those kind of trades, but you are less than 10 weeks away from being able to do that, right? As soon as week 2 rolls around and he leads the league in, target volume and receptions after 2 weeks, it's done. You got to go out there and get Drake London right now. He has what it takes to be the wide receiver 1. And Snoog, if that happens, he no longer is in tier 3 for me. He enters that tier 2 with Lamb, Amon-Ra, Puka, and Brian Thomas Jr. And I think he has that clearest path out of all of those guys. You have a dark horse one here. We said we've been buying Drake London, the other guy that we've been buying everywhere. And you see him, at first he's looking like, just like a kid out of high school. Now he's got a man body. He's yoked. Marvin Harrison Jr. looks the part. He's put the work in the offseason. If Kyler Murray can bounce back and be a little bit more efficient, can Marvin Harrison Jr. get into this category?
I do think so. And I do think his name's going to get thrown around in this conversation because I think the talent's there. I think the opportunity is going to be there with Kyler Murray. I think he has, he's that type of player that can score 14, 15, 16 touchdowns. He had like 9 last year. And if you look at how many times Kyler Murray overthrew him or didn't connect with him or missed him on a touchdown of like 20 plus yards, 30 plus yards, or just down on the red zone. Like I was watching through his entire tape. I counted like 9 different situations that could have easily been touchdowns. And that's where that touchdown is a luck thing. Does have some play into it. Like touchdowns are very unpredictable because there's so much that can happen to just make you miss a touchdown just like that. In that case, it was Marv, but let's not forget how elite of a prospect he was in player in college. Like he is a man amongst boys. He still is. He's still elite. He still dominated last year. If you just watch against Jalen Ramsey, he made him look like a little boy out there. Like he was burning him left and right. Dude couldn't guard him. A lot of people can't guard Marvin Harrison Jr. Like he was winning routes first man, winning routes out of the slot last year. It's more of an offensive coordinator and Kyler Murray issue than it was Marvin Harrison Jr. And I do think the focus this year is going to be getting him the football downfield, and getting him the football in the red zone because he's the best player on that offense, and it's not close. Trey McBride's good. He's not Marvin Harrison Jr., and he doesn't have that talent, doesn't have that upside, and he can't win at all 3 levels like Marv can. So that's why I'm high on Marvin Harrison Jr. and why I think he can get into this conversation, because I think if he has a big breakout this year, everybody's going to start talking about him. Like, can he be the next wide receiver 1 overall type talent? because he's going to get there.
You and I talked about last year. I didn't draft a single share of Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't know if you did as well, but
I didn't.
I was tearing back off Marv to get to Malik plus. You and I, we're getting that done all over the place. What would it take for you right now to sell Malik Nabers to get to Marvin Harrison? Because I have people ask me that all the time, right? Like there's buyer's remorse, and the guy that traded and took Malik Nabers, now that Marv guy is having a little bit of regret. So what's the gap between those two for you?
It's still a first, but I like honestly
More.
or more, but I like I'm not paying that to go to Nabers. Like I don't like paying hefty pay ups like that. For me personally, it's just always been something that I haven't been a fan of. But what I really do like with Marv is I do think there was a reason that they were close as prospects, and there's a reason that they're both elite talents in the NFL. Yes, Nabers had a better rookie year, but you could almost argue like the situation was better. Their defense was absolutely terrible. They were losing every single game, and they were just gunslinging the ball with Drew Lock all game long. And obviously, yes, that's perfect for a fantasy football wide receiver. You can say the same thing about Brian Thomas Jr. Jaguars defense and team was absolutely dog crap. Mac Jones and Trevor Lawrence force-feeding Brian Thomas Jr. the football the whole time. There's news. Kyler Murray was not doing that for Marvin Harrison Jr. last year. Yes, Trey McBride's there, so it does take a lot out of the way. And there's more to it. Who's the offensive coordinator and all that good stuff. But Marvin Harrison Jr. has the same talent and skill set as Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Nabers. I think Malik Nabers is a step above both of them, but I think that they're all in that same realm. It's just going to be who has the best coach, which Brian Daboll is probably the best coach out of any of the three, and then who can get to that next level. And I do think Marv's going to get there with those guys at some point.
Talking about coaches, taking the guy to the next level, talking about elite level coaches. My last guy, he's my most owned dynasty wide receiver, and it's Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice was someone that when the suspension first happened, when the car crash happened, I bought everywhere. I was getting him for seconds. I was teaching you guys to do that. I was trying to tell you how to do that. We were getting you set up. Snoog, Rashee Rice in 2023, 102 targets, 79 receptions, 938 and 7. Down the stretch, played phenomenal. 2024, 29 targets, 24 receptions, 288 and 2 in just 3 games. That's 17.3 fantasy points per game. That is 9 targets per game. We talked about he would have to average 10. I think that could really happen. Over his last 9 games, when you look at those 3 games in 2024 and his final 6 when he had 85% snap share or more, 85 targets, 69 receptions, 689 yards for 5 touchdowns, and Snoog, 18.63 fantasy points per game. That's a top 5 wide receiver. He is criminally going in round 3, round 4 in your redraft leagues. In Dynasty, he's still going too late. Guys, stop. It is literally Rashee Rice is going to go off this season. He's someone that I'm buying everywhere I can. Year 3 is that breakout campaign. We saw it with CeeDee Lamb. We saw it with Drake London. We saw it with Nico Collins. Now we're going to see it with Rashee Rice. And I think he's the cheapest out of everybody we've had on this show so far. You can give up Marv in a second and get Rashee in a first. You can give pretty much anybody else that we've named on this show, get a first added on top. I'm taking Rome Odunze, Devonta Smith, Chris Olave, adding a second, getting up to him. I'm trading T. Higgins straight up. I'm trading A.J. Brown to get Rashee Rice plus, Garrett Wilson to get Rashee Rice plus. You would be shocked at what you can get. Like, I think you could literally offer Ladd McConkey in a second and get Rashee in a first, and that's going to be a huge win because it might be contrarian to what some people think. Rashee Rice is more talented. He's in a better offense. So Rashee Rice is going to smash this year. We gave you 6 guys there that we think have that wide receiver 1 capability. Again, looking for 175 targets, 1,700 yards, 17 touchdowns. That's the 17s. We are here to help you guys smash. So right now we're going to put the link down below, patreon.com/smashaccept to get all of our content, all of our rankings, get you guys for start sits when we have the season roll around, trade advice, all of our DMs, everything that we have to offer here at Smash Accept. So thank you so much for tuning in and enjoy the process.